50 miles from London, and I'm heading into the southwest of England to tell the story of a road.
A humble road, you may think, but it's a surprising road. It's called the A303.
The A303 is famous as the road that passes Stonehenge on the way to Cornwall, and infamous for its traffic jams and bank holiday bottlenecks. I've used it for years to take me to the rivers where I love to go fishing, but like everyone else speeding up and down it each day, I never gave it a thought.
Then it struck me that the road was more than just a means to an end, a way to have some fun, and that it was an entity in its own right.
It's helped to shape an ancient landscape that is at the heart of England, and to satisfy our restlessness, the urge within us to explore the next horizon.
The A303 starts round about here, just outside Basingstoke, on a sweeping slip road off the M3. It's the start of 100 miles or so, reaching into the heart of deepest Devon.
It's only been called the A303 for about 80 years, but it's been around a lot longer than that, as the prehistoric Harrow Way or the Roman Fosse Way. In the 19th century, it was known as the New Direct Road, running all the way from London to Exeter.
Much of the modern A303 makes use of the old 19th century road, and occasionally you come across some interesting relics of that past, such as a hedge, a surprising hedge right down the middle of the road. Now, on the whole, the modern road has no pretensions to beauty. The central reservation is just concrete and scrubby grass. But here, for several miles at Micheldever, extends this really rather neat and tidy hedge, which is quite clearly left over from when the road was a single carriageway affair. And here ahead, an oak tree, a fine oak tree, left in glorious isolation in between these two carriageways, giving a touch of class, if I may say so. Well, it's unnoticed history, isn't it? I mean, it's been here for who knows.
Beyond Weyhill, Hampshire soon turns into Wiltshire, the second of 5 counties the A303 cuts through on its way west. The road beneath me is late 20th century vintage, but the landscape around it has a much older story to tell.
Here we are, just turning off. Oh! Oh, not an easy manoeuvre in a Morris Traveller. The old days. And here we go. Hope the suspension can take
it. This is one of my favourite places along this road, Beacon Hill. There's a tremendous view of the landscape falling away to the south. The A303 is just below, but our impact on this part of the world goes back much further.
From where I'm standing, in all directions, dotted around the place, are ancient, prehistoric burial mounds, tumuli, barrows. Some of them disappeared under the plough or under buildings, many of them still visible. And when you drive along the A303, through this part of the world, you're in fact driving through a prehistoric graveyard.
It's the A303's most famous landmark, Stonehenge.
We're quite a distance away, and the stones look rather small, don't they?
From here, they're also overwhelmed by the traffic. But step to one side and you'll see why I've stopped here.
They do look small, but what you get from here is a sense of their context, of where they stand in the landscape. The great open sky, the wide open spaces, the rolling grassland, and the monument in the middle of it. And I know English Heritage will hate me for saying this, but actually we're just close to the road. It's not a bad place to be stuck in a traffic jam, because it'll give you perhaps the best view of Stonehenge there is.
A proper car, a real car.
What do you think of it?
I think she's beautiful.
I like it.
Oh, yes.
She has to be. I'm going to give you a guided tour.
Robert Key grew up in Wiltshire. In 1983, he became the local MP. MP for Stonehenge, you might call him. The A303 runs right through his old constituency.
This must have been one of the first cars that has flashing orange indicator lights instead of flippers.
Oh, instead of those things.
I often wonder what...
Today, Stonehenge is a World Heritage Site, which loosely translated means interfere with it at your peril. But we weren't always so protective of it. During and after the First World War, the Flying Corps were based here. And the military were allowed to do pretty much as they wanted.
I've seen a photograph of an Army Land Rover perched on top of the stones, brought here in the middle of the night after a particularly good evening in the officers' mess over at Lark Hill, which is only a couple of miles. And goodness knows how they got it up there, but they did.
They wouldn't get away with it today, would they?
They certainly wouldn't, no.
But would they get away with this today? In the 1950s, cranes were brought in to rearrange the stones. Sacrilege, some said.
These are the stones that were, as it were, re-erected.
Yes.
These massive ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other one, the smaller ones here, were okay.
Some of them were tilted.
They were tilted.
Yes, so they were straightened up a bit.
Yes.
You can see on that stone there's a great big wodge of concrete
Yes, I see.
holding it up.
Yes.
Which people don't really think about when they go past the stones.
Were they at an angle? Were they
Yes,
lying
they
down?
were.
Leaning sort of how
Mostly
how far?
lying down. The tops of the stones had disappeared. And so they put them back on top. And it was a major reconstruction, really. I mean, I think over the years, something like 23 stones have been re-erected with the lintels put back on top.
In the early days of motoring, the A303 was a mere slip of a thing, which didn't trouble the stones at all. How things change. Today, the road's a scourge, noisy, dirty, and often gridlocked. There have been many plans to reroute it, over 50 in fact, including one to bury the A303 in a tunnel. All fell by the wayside, despite Robert's best efforts. In the 90s, he struggled to find a solution as competing government departments, public pressure groups, and even the Druids locked horns.
I thought, well, there's only one thing to do, go to the Prime Minister. I kid you not, Margaret Thatcher was on her hands and knees with me in her room in the House of Commons, poring over maps of all the possible routes around, discussing which land belonged to the Ministry of Defence, which was National Trust, which was English Heritage, and she was really engaged on it. Even Margaret Thatcher was defeated by Stonehenge.
Even Margaret Thatcher.
John Major, bless him, did the same, pored over the maps, but then absolutely nothing happened.
Now at least everyone can shut up about it.
Oh no, this problem's never going to go away. The A303 is going nowhere.
The ceremony is led by the Druids.
Farewell, O sun, ever-returning light. Farewell, O sun, ever-returning light. May there be peace in the south.
May there be peace in the south.
May there be peace in the north.
May there be peace in the north.
Rollo Mowling is the archdruid of Glastonbury and Stonehenge.
Thee we invoke, O light of life.
When he isn't leading ceremonies, he lives with his wife Donna just outside Swansea.
First time I ever went to Stonehenge, I'd just been made a druid and I was in my 20s, and I had a drum with me, I seem to remember, and was sitting down in the middle of Stonehenge playing this drum. I suddenly noticed that the stones were responding and seemed to be vibrating and shaking. And so I upped this a little bit, gave it more welly, and it started to actually become really pretty powerful in there. And the stones themselves had an extraordinary appearance of moving in time to the music. And I think this is where the old folklore name for Stonehenge, Giant's Dance, must come from.
I'd like Stonehenge to belong to everybody. It's a people's temple in a way that sacred places that are still used by particular denominations cannot be. My involvement came about because I was the historian on the commission which ran the old-style English heritage when it was still a government quango. I became interested in the new visitor centre which English Heritage was constructing near Stonehenge, being the first proper heritage centre that had ever been designed and built near the monument. I was engaged as an advisor after I had given a keynote address to a big conference at Warwick University on heritage, at which I outlined a view of the prehistoric past, in which we would never know what the religion was and what the ceremonies were that were conducted at the great monuments it had left us. And therefore anybody's guess was as good as anybody else's, as long as it was based on the material evidence itself. And therefore as many different explanations as we could have, the healthier the situation would be. On that basis, I was engaged as academic advisor to the construction of the Heritage Centre, and in particular I had input on the design of its exhibition space. The exhibition space really is for the serious-minded visitor, meaning that pretty well everybody goes through the big, high-tech interpretations of the monument as a space, that is, seeing how it was built, seeing it through various seasons. The exhibition space is for those who want a bit of extra experience and ask some extra questions like why. I think that our culture has a tremendous need to engage with the past, largely because in my lifetime the past has died, and the sense that the moral picture, the sense of the world that our grandparents had is still largely relevant has gone, and therefore we're cut off from the past, and so the need to engage with it directly through archaeology, history, reenactment, heritage is new and very powerful. I don't claim to understand Stonehenge better than most people, or indeed than anybody. I would like people who visit Stonehenge to take away an enhanced sense of how mysterious it is, and the huge range of options, the huge range of ways in which we can see it for ourselves, and to feel empowered to be able to develop their own personal visions.
Lot number 15 was Stonehenge.
This is a genuinely amazing document dated the 31st of December 1915. It's an agreement, conveyance, between Cosmo Gordon Antrobus and two people. Mrs. Mary Bella Alice Chubb and Cecil Herbert Edward Chubb, Esquire. This man, Cecil Chubb, went along to the auction, wasn't particularly planning to buy anything at all, got quite concerned that perhaps Stonehenge might be snapped up by some very wealthy American who would even perhaps take it away, dismantle it and erect it over in the States. So he decided to bid and he bought the thing. We can see that he paid the sum of £6,600. That was it. The story goes that Cecil bought Stonehenge as a wedding present for his wife, and we can only assume that she was quite hard to please because apparently she wasn't best impressed. And despite having shelled out £6,600, 3 years after he paid for Stonehenge in 1915, he gave it to the nation. And he was rewarded for that. He was given a knighthood and became known locally as Viscount Stonehenge.
Well, we've been standing in a circle with some of the people that have gathered here, and we've been calling to basically draw Mother Nature around the community and make the community part of Mother Nature. So the idea is that the energy has shifted now, and we're in an age where community works better than one person trying to tell everybody else what to do. We do it for each other. So that was the message of this morning, as well as celebrating the summer sun. Spirits of the North, Earth, our ancestors and the She, we thank you for being present in this circle today.
Despite the dreary weather, thousands turned out to celebrate the summer solstice. Here's Druid Frank Summers.
Well, this morning is summer solstice. It's the shortest night, the longest day, and it's the beginning of summer season. Everybody thinks it's Midsummer's Day and gets disappointed, but actually this is just a turning point into summer. Imagine all these people in a very good mood turned out in wind and rain to celebrate the turning of the season. The sun still rose, we just didn't see it, but the mood is here, and it's really touching that people would still come.
The history of Stonehenge is shrouded in mystery, with no one knowing how thousands of years ago the boulders were placed on top of each other.
Stonehenge. "3,000 years ago, our ancestors built Stonehenge as a site of ceremony and ritual west of the River Avon. In recent years, archaeologists have come to believe that Stonehenge is just part of a vast sacred landscape full of monuments. But so far, their discoveries have mainly been to the west of the Avon. What lies to the east has largely been a mystery, until this year, when a team from Wessex Archaeology started digging at Bulford. At Bulford, just 3 miles away from Stonehenge, the discoveries were not only unexpected, they were unique, and they're helping to write a whole new chapter in the history of this archaeologically rich landscape.
Shiv this out a bit.
Phil Harding leads the team.
Hi, this is Phil Harding. I'm talking to you on the edge of Salisbury Plain, about 3 miles east of Stonehenge. That's in that direction there. And I'm working on a site here. We've been working here since, what, just before Christmas now. And this is really quite an exciting site. Come and have a look.
The team has uncovered something never seen in Britain before. A double henge. 2 circular banks and ditches.
So what we found are 2 previously unknown henge monuments. This is an incredible opportunity to unravel part of the ritual landscape of this part of Wiltshire, most importantly, just down the road from Stonehenge.
So what Phil really wants to find out is whether this site was in use at the same time as Stonehenge, and exactly what our Neolithic ancestors were doing here. Ground-penetrating radar reveals a series of pits just outside the double henge.
That is amazing.
Phil hopes that these will provide the evidence he needs.
An axe. Excellent.
It's a promising find.
That is absolutely gorgeous, with a blade there just beautifully polished.
Neolithic axes were incredibly important tools used for the clearing of trees during the earliest days of farming. Putting one in a pit seems like a huge sacrifice.
There would be plenty of use left in this, and to place one of these in a pit, throw away a genuinely useful axe. Why would you do it?
As well as dozens of axe heads, mysterious chalk balls are found in the pits.
Lovely. Oh, what a gem.
These are finds that connect us to our ancestors, and for Phil, it's precious evidence of what they were doing here.
I'm sure they must have been maybe lucky mementos, maybe superstitious, maybe totemic items, some sort of votive offering to the gods, and maybe it brought them good luck.
In 1 week, 40 pits are excavated, and what's found in each one is remarkably similar.
This is an incredible collection of material. It's as though people have got a checklist and they're placing objects into the pit.
These are such enigmatic clues, glimpses of the rituals being carried out at the double henge.
Didn't want to come.
But some of the pits contain something rather different.
Now, that is what I call a bone.
It's from an aurochs.
God, look at the size of it.
A giant prehistoric cow.
The aurochs was not on the average Friday night takeaway menu. I think what we are really looking at is festive, feasting, celebrations. Who knows, it might be seasonal, it might be marriage, it could be any other things. But what it is not is your day-to-day rubbish.
This seems then to be a ritual site where our ancestors held religious feasts. But can Phil be sure that it's contemporary with Stonehenge?
Can we prove that these ring ditches is of the same date as our Neolithic pits? If we can do that, then we actually find an incredible ritual complex of the same date as maybe Stonehenge.
The team digs a trench across the double henge, looking for evidence that will give them a date.
Phil, look at that.
What you got there then? Pot?
Yeah, that's with decoration.
Ah! That is?
Yeah.
I swear that is. That's decorated. You little devil, Johan.
It's a fragment of pottery.
Well, I'm getting really excited about this because it looks like it is decorated. You can see there's a bit of a ridge there and a bit of a ridge there, and these grooves. And I think that that is the best indicator that we've got of grooved ware, which is the typical late Neolithic pottery. That is what we want to find.
Grooved ware pottery like this dates from the same period as Stonehenge, so it strongly suggests that this double henge was in use at the same time. I've invited Phil to come into our lab with some of his finds to give me a fuller picture as to what our ancestors were really up to at this unique site.
They are places where people are gathering together and feasting, and they have to be ceremonial monuments.
So these very strange balls, I mean, what are those about?
These are made out of chalk. What you'll notice in some places, look at that, you can see the actual manufacturing traces. Now, chalk is a very soft rock. If you start beating it about too much, you will wear those manufacturing traces away. So I think that they are ritual material, being made for some function, and then they are then being placed in the pit. Those spheres, those balls are special.
Now, what about the stone tools then? So these were coming out of the pit as well?
Axes. Axes were incredibly powerful objects to them. They're almost symbolic offerings to show their wealth, their status, their power, because the material that is in the pits is the refuse, if you like, from people who are carrying out the ceremonies in our henge-type monuments.
This completely unexpected discovery reveals a significant ritual site where Neolithic people gathered for ceremonies and feasting.
By the time you've done all your post-excavation work on this, what are you going to add to our understanding of the Stonehenge landscape?
The people at my site would probably have witnessed the construction of Stonehenge.
They're just a few miles away.
And what we've now done is we're moving our knowledge from the west bank of the River Avon and showing that equally as important is life on the east bank. And it just blows me over. I mean, I'm just absolutely...
Britain's first double henge is a massive discovery that over the next few years could fundamentally change our understanding of how our ancestors 4,500 years ago used the Stonehenge landscape.
When people contemplate human history, they often think in terms of landmarks that tie the past to the present. Unfortunately, time has a way of causing these places to disappear. But not here. This is Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, England, about 76 miles southwest of London, and 7 miles north of the cathedral town of Salisbury. There is perhaps no other place on earth as ancient, as sacred, and as mysterious as this stone ring standing sentinel over the windswept fields. There has been human habitation here since 8500 BC. Stonehenge was declared a World Heritage Site by the United Nations in 1986. As important as it is, the way it was presented to the public was something of an embarrassment. It was even described as a national disgrace. But all that changed in December 2013 with the opening of a brand new £27 million visitor center. the whole Stonehenge experience changed. Visitors no longer pulled off the highway into the parking lot next to the monument. Now, traffic is directed to the new visitor center about 1.5 miles from Stonehenge. The stone circle is no longer visible from the visitor center, and that's by design. English Heritage, the group that oversees Stonehenge, removed the old road. Now, visitors board trams that carry them along the route the ancients walked. You can also walk to the ring, and imagine the effort it must have taken to transport the massive stones to the hilltop. The smaller stones, blue stones, which weigh about 4 tons, came from Wales about 125 miles away. The larger sarsen stones, weighing up to 40 tons, came from 25 miles away and were erected about 2500 BC. It's estimated it would have taken at least 500 men to drag the stones, along with another 100 moving the logs used as rollers. Scholars still debate the way the ancients used Stonehenge. Most believe it was a place of worship and used for ceremony, and that it also played a role in observing the movement of the moon and the sun in order to predict the seasons. The new visitor center includes a museum and displays that help guests visualize the scope of the site. There's also a restaurant and a gift shop. Nearby, there's a smaller stone monument dedicated to the memory of 2 Royal Flying Corps aviators who were the first English pilots to die in the line of duty when their plane crashed near here in 1912. Stonehenge and Salisbury are an easy day trip from London by train. The Tourist Information Office sells tickets that include the round-trip bus ride to the monument. The Salisbury Plain is a place of remembrance, where those of this generation can experience some of the awe and wonder experienced by the people who walked here thousands of years ago. You can imagine how remarkable the people who built Stonehenge were, and how different, and yet how alike they are to us today.
After a good night's rest, it's a sunny drive of 20 miles or so to my final Frith photo. The location is world famous.
Surely Stonehenge hasn't changed for thousands of years. Those magnificent stones, wrapped in mystery, seem almost eternal. But it's not true. The stones have been moved, and the change over the past 100 years or so has been quite radical. Our Frith photograph proves that point.
The great value of Frith's photo is that it was taken just before a period where a number of alterations were made. And before anyone suspects that Britain's greatest prehistoric treasure may be something of a sham, let me assure you that any changes have been part of some careful and expert conservation. Dave Batchelor from English Heritage has agreed to meet me to reveal all.
Now, in Victorian times, when people started to travel around, this would already be a great attraction.
Yes, it was a place that scientists looked at, architects looked at right the way through the period. It was first put into a guidebook in some respects when Geoffrey of Monmouth, working in the 12th century, did a collection of places to visit back in that sense. So it's been known since that time.
Right, so when we get Frith and his photographers, this is obvious. Go to Stonehenge, take a picture because we can sell those pictures.
Yes.
Right, so here's our picture, and where do you think this is from?
It's just about where we're standing,
right.
Effectively.
It doesn't look at all like that, does it?
No, it doesn't. This is taken at the very end of the 19th century. What we're looking at is this trilithon here. It was collapsed. It fell down in 1797. This is the upright on its end. This is its top surface here. And we're also looking at the big, great trilithon, stone 56 here, which was leaning over at that angle.
So where's that?
That's now been straightened up.
But as with most things in life, prevention is usually better than cure. And if you look closely, you can see where some of Dave's predecessors have taken radical action to halt any further collapses around the ancient monument.
Now look, that's your concrete, isn't it?
That is a piece of concrete.
This is an ancient piece of concrete, all of what, 50 years old?
About 50 years old, yes.
So we're not trying to sort of make it fake in any way.
No.
It's just quite obvious. That's the modern bit.
That's the modern bit.
And here we are, these stones.
That's right.
Right.
Stonehenge has changed a lot, and that's why actually in photographic terms you need a regular record of it to take on board those changes.
But however much Stonehenge has been patched up, glued and realigned, the mystical aura of the grand stones is still unchanged. And there's one group of people who are mightily relieved about that. I'm meeting one of them, Frank the Druid.
Well, it is wonderful to be here. Today, meeting you and being in this sacred space, chosen as a special place by the ancestors, what goes through my mind is the peace, the sanctity, and the very special energy that Stonehenge has when you visit and you're fortunate enough to come inside. It's a place blessed. It's very, very special.
But you don't have to be a druid to appreciate that side of it.
Absolutely not.
No, that's good. So I can speak to you on the same level, even though I'm not much of a druid.
Yes.
That's good. And for you, are you worried about the fact that people think of you as kind of made up or sort of lunatic or new age or all those images of druids? They're not exactly, oh, here's a sensible person, here's a druid. It's here's a druid, bit of a laugh, nutter. What do you think about that?
Well, Stonehenge has attracted a lot of eccentrics, both in the field of science and mysticism and druidry.
So you don't mind that? You don't mind?
I do mind, because the Druid tradition is very ancient. It has a great deal to offer to the modern world, especially as we go into this transition of climate change, and we as a people of Earth have to find a new way forwards. And there's nothing new age about that.
I'm not sure I've got the right clothes to be a druid.
No problem. We'll dress you in the robes of a bard.
So that would be, well, like a bard would be a sort of poet?
Essentially, the bards manifested in society as poets and artists who would travel and share the news. The early journalists, in fact,
well,
passing news between the tribes.
I would have thought I'm a shoo-in for that, aren't I?
Come on, John.
How do I look?
You look good. Follow me.
Right, so we're taking part in a ceremony, are we? Is that the idea?
Well, I'd like to walk you through what happens in a ceremony.
OK.
Firstly, we've entered a great place that belongs to the ancestors.
Yes.
So, a silent pause. Hello, ancestors.
Hello, ancestors.
Exactly.
Do I have to say it? No, I just have to think it.
You can just think it or say it out loud.
Can I bang the drum?
Absolutely, if you want to.
Right, OK, can I give me a bit more of a sort of sense I'm taking part?
We're loud and proud and slightly crazy at Stonehenge, so what we do for real, but we don't do it with great reverence. We're loud and have fun.
So you shout out welcome and I'll do the drum.
OK.
Right? Yeah, go on.
Welcome to Stonehenge, everybody. We are here this day to celebrate being in the presence of the ancestors. Shortly after the turning of the year of autumn equinox. Well done.
OK, is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what do you do when you're not a druid?
When I'm not a druid, I work full-time as an IT consultant.
Oh, right. So behind every IT consultant is a possible druid?
Quite likely.
That's great. Oh, well, back to work. Time for my photo. Ordinary tourists, if I can say that, can't get as close to the stones as I can. Special permission. So I'm going to take advantage of that and take my iconic photo. And there it is, the great immovable monument of Neolithic Britain. That's not quite as immovable as you might think.
Stonehenge is the most iconic and intensively studied prehistoric archaeological site in the world. For centuries, the site has generated curiosity and wonder. But it was in the 17th and 18th centuries that the importance of Stonehenge's landscape became recognized. With so many upstanding monuments visible within the landscape surrounding Stonehenge, it isn't surprising that these have largely remained the focus for archaeological investigations. The construction of Stonehenge commenced approximately 5,100 years ago. Repeatedly modified, it reached its recognizable form about 3,600 years ago. But the landscape of Stonehenge reveals evidence from 10,000 years of activity, starting during the Mesolithic and leading all the way to the present day. The majority of previous studies within the Stonehenge landscape have focused mainly on the upstanding monuments that remain visible today. However, much more is buried and not visible at the surface. Advancements in the technology for investigating archaeological landscapes by the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute made it possible to explore the entire hidden landscape at a high resolution, starting in 2010. By mounting a wide array of equipment to vehicles such as quad bikes, and by linking the collection of data to GPS satellite navigation, it was possible to undertake a survey at a scale and resolution that had never been attempted before. It became possible for the first time to get additional information about known sites within the landscape and to fill in the gaps between monuments. A total of approximately 12 hectares was surveyed between 2010 and 2014. The ambitions of the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes project were achieved through European cooperation, with an international team directed by the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute and the University of Birmingham, and involving the universities of Bradford, Vienna, St Andrews and Ghent. The project has used a range of different techniques for the non-invasive exploration of the hidden landscape. Geophysical techniques measure different parameters of the soil to generate 2D and 3D maps of buried archaeology. The principal methods used were magnetometry, measuring variations in the magnetic properties of the soil, and ground-penetrating radar, which provides 3D imagery of buried features. Other geophysical methods were also used, including sub-decimeter topographic laser scanning of the entire landscape of Stonehenge. This project has shown that it is not possible to appreciate the significance of Stonehenge itself without understanding the landscape around it. The high-resolution survey of the known monuments around Stonehenge has significantly increased the level of knowledge about them, in many cases allowing us to identify different phases of construction and presenting quite different interpretations to those previously held. By surveying the areas between the upstanding monuments, the project has revealed a multi-period landscape far from the empty space previously imagined. This includes a range of new monuments contemporary with Stonehenge, including similar, though smaller, hengiform sites. We can now see a landscape dotted with numerous smaller temple sites constructed of wood, stone and earth, surrounding the larger site of Stonehenge. The increased knowledge about the hidden landscape of Stonehenge has meant that it is now possible to explore the evolution of the landscape through time and how the different monuments might have been used. To obtain high-resolution detail, multiple geophysics sensors were mounted closely together, providing dense sampling intervals. The higher resolution meant that smaller features, such as small pits and even post holes, could be identified. Features that would have been missed using conventional approaches. Stonehenge could never really be understood when we knew so little about the landscape in which it stood. We now understand that it was surrounded by smaller shrines, which were completely unknown until this groundbreaking study was completed. We need to know much more about this enigmatic landscape, but we can be sure of one thing. Cutting-edge remote sensing and geophysical prospecting have fundamentally changed how we interpret the Stonehenge landscape, and how archaeologists will study similar landscapes in Britain and around the world in the future.